Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Ray. Thank you for being here and thank you for your comments. My recent post on quantum shifting and the connection between everything, let's face it. But working with consciousness, whether it's as a healing potential or the potential to shift your life experience in any way. So before I get started on today's anecdote, there's been some interest in doing some live sessions. So I've put another 2 possibilities in the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the shop section. I've put unlimited availability and there is no fee. There's an option if you want to contribute something, you absolutely can. But it's testing the waters, see if this works for people. There's a session on Wednesday and a session on Friday. And it's for anybody who's interested in exploring consciousness as a healing potential. Completely intuitive session, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so have a look in the Buy Me a Coffee link below. There are some interesting comments, one about how we're constantly shifting timelines and perhaps not so aware of it because it can be quite subtle. The timeline shifts that I'm talking about, we're more conscious perhaps because of the tight spot that I found myself in both instances. And I think it is a very useful and powerful tool to transform your life and to meet any challenge that you may be faced with on your path. Were there any concrete action steps that I took before the whoosh and I found myself in Botswana on horseback? The answer to that is not really, because I think most of the steps have been taken energetically in consciousness. So much more subtle, but more powerful perhaps in terms of being able to shift your life experience. And the things that I had done really energetically was I had let go. I had let go of resistance, I had let go of beliefs, and I had started to open up to new possibilities. I was ready for something new. And there was the shift in me that allowed a shift to happen in my external and for the universal consciousness to meet me in that space that I was creating by allowing for that space to happen, to be created. And this is where we are very much the participant in our own experience. Even if in this particular experience, I wasn't aware of what I was doing in terms of energy, consciousness, or co-creation in that sense. I quit my job, my not so insignificant salary at the time, to earn a handful of raindrops or pula. Rain is very valuable in Botswana. I think I earn about 200 pula a month. Not much at all. But it was the most enriching experience that I've ever had in my life. Turns out that Botswana was just a stepping stone. And the ensuing 16 years were a deep dive into my shadow and healing. The second anecdote is very much related to this, and it was interesting that I earned a handful of raindrops in Botswana because everything I experienced in my shadow work is related to lack, as it often is, but I did a deep dive into lack, and all the experiences that I had showed me where that lack was very much part of my conditioning and my belief system, and it was lack in an emotional sense, it was lack in a financial sense, in a material sense, in every sense there was lack and I experienced it, and it was incredibly challenging, very challenging. And the second anecdote about the quantum leap that I experienced, I was in a very, very challenging moment. I had just left a relationship which left me with my 2 kids on my own. I really felt I had no choice but to leave this relationship for my own health and well-being, for the health and well-being of my children. It was a choice I had to make very much on my own, listening to my own needs and trusting in the process, trusting that to choose me, even when everything was so uncertain, was the only thing I could do, the only thing that made sense. And at this particular moment, lack was what I was experiencing. Not just the emotional lack, the lack of support within a relationship. There was lack in every sense, but more than anything, there was a financial lack, a lack of financial security, a lack of stability, a lack of everything. But I had me, I had myself, and I had my children. And for me, that was what mattered in that moment. Even though I had very little in terms of financial security or income at the time, what I had been doing, and this had been something I've been practicing for some time, was imagining my dream life. And I continue to do that to this day. Imagining my dream life, and I feel very called to the specific experience, and imagining my dream home. Now at the time, as I said, I had nothing, and I was in a position where I was about to leave and needed to find somewhere for me and my kids to live. I needed to create that stability. Irrational as it was, and there was nothing rational about this decision, I decided to buy a house. Now for most people, if you have no money in the bank, potentially no income, which was another interesting facet of this situation. I don't need to go into that right now, the detail of that. But it's not the first thing that occurs to you. I will go and buy a house with nothing. That was the course of action that I was feeling guided to take. And there was something in me that believed in this potential. And I'd looked around at all the rational options of renting. I'd really done my research and looked at what was possible, rationally possible. And I didn't like what I was seeing. There was nothing there that said, yes, I'll do this. And so what I did was I started to look around for a house to buy. And interestingly, I kept on walking past this house. It had a for sale sign on it. And I kept on walking past thinking that would be nice, but probably outside my budget. And I kept on finding a house online. I kept on thinking that's nice, but it's outside my budget. I contacted an estate agent, and the first place she took me was this very house actually. I put in an application at the bank, and funnily enough, they rejected my application on the basis that I had no money, which you might not find surprising. But at the time, I wasn't going to let that beat me. I felt very much that I had found my house. I felt intuitively that this was my house. What happened after that was a series of events that I had no control over, other than I stated my intention to buy the house. And I took the necessary steps in terms of putting forward paperwork and trying to convince everybody that this was going to work. I won't go into detail of exactly how this happened, but essentially what I felt again was that there were forces at play that were beyond my control, that met my intention and my belief in the possibility, the potential that I was exploring, that it was indeed possible that I could buy this house with virtually no money in the bank. It was as if, by magic, everything fell into place. It was my ability to explore a potential that was in no way rational, and at the same time to believe in that potential, because there was something within me that said, yes, this is possible, and this is what I wish to experience. I started to imagine a potential that was really quite far removed from what I was experiencing. It was the intention that I set and the belief in a possibility that was outside the rational. And at a certain point I let go and I was trusting the process. And there was a moment when it seemed like nothing was happening until it did. And when it did, everything accelerated. And here I am, sitting in the house that I bought with literally nothing. And it goes to show you that in a situation of severe lack, I was able to manifest something of material worth. And I was also, more importantly, able to manifest security and stability, a home for myself and my children at a point when I desperately needed exactly that. And this was really what my shadow work and my healing journey has been about, so that I can shift that internal conditioning and belief system and to start to operate from a sense of self that is rooted in self-worth and self-belief, and listening to my intuition and allowing myself to create from that space of imagination and what I feel called to experience. And often it has had very little to do with where I found myself at that particular moment. So again, a powerful way that we can use our power as co-creators, our ability to imagine a potential and to co-create in consciousness, to explore different potentials and to shift our life experience in incredibly significant and positive ways. So there you go, another experience of quantum shift in my life. And there have been many. And I think it's an interesting topic to continue to explore in terms of our power as co-creators. So as always, let me know what you think about your experiences, if you have any questions. And don't forget to click like if you've enjoyed this or finding it useful. It helps me reach a wider audience and to beat the algorithm, become the algorithm. Okay, so looking forward to seeing you in the next post.